have been a few that have been like that. You know, Zul'Farrak was one like that. But when you actually see the scale of these inside the game, it's really super impressive. They make, they really make the zones come alive. Seeing this, really huge focal point for.
Historically, we've had to scale them to be smaller. So here they're at a 1-to-1 scale, so they actually have an awesome impact on the zones.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. Come on up.
Hi. Given the increased focus on doing multiple things, are we going to be able to do quests in a raid group?
That's a great question. I mean, really, there's not a lot of reasons why we don't allow that other than the fact that we don't want a large number of people able to beat certain quest mechanics. But now with the advent of scenarios and the fact that our group quests might end up moving towards scenarios, it might not be as much of an issue.
I think we might be pulling that for 4.3.
Yeah.
I'll have to check. We talked about that recently.
Yeah, it's definitely been talked about.
Awesome.
Thank you. All right, come on up. Say Blues Brother.
That's right. I have a question about the kick process. Usually in some groups, you try to kick somebody for being stupid, and it says a 3-hour wait period, when most 5-mans are 10 and 20 minutes long, or maybe an hour long.
We have an internal algorithm, I guess you could call it, that works for our kicking, and it actually keeps track of the number of times you've kicked someone, how long, how many times that person has been kicked, and it actually modifies that number dynamically based on kind of the history of your kicking. So we can kind of know, are you excessively kicking people for no reason, or are you the kind of person that, you come across someone occasionally and then they'll get kicked right away. But that's essentially what you're seeing, is that algorithm working, trying to help the fact that, someone doesn't get kicked that doesn't necessarily deserve it. That's essentially, we're just trying to have that system feel as best as we can. Because we want to allow people to kick, but we don't want people to be kicked for no reason.
Yeah, we want people to be kicked.
Thank you.
Yeah. But anyway, we want people to be kicked for the right reason and not for the lulls.
Mm-hmm. All right, come on up.
At the Cataclysm Lost, you talked about having the 3 raids as well and like 13 bosses in the tier, and you're talking about doing that for Mists of Pandaria as well. Yeah. But then in the later patches of Cataclysm, like 4.2 and 4.3, you're down to 7 and 8 bosses respectively. Is that just the nature of patches, or do you plan on having bigger tiers in the patches of Pandaria as well?
We haven't actually figured out, we haven't finalized what the tier plan will be for all the launch raids. For example, we don't know if we're going to have 2 tiers and split those up, or if they're actually going to be combined into 1 tier. A lot of that comes into how we're going to actually, get loot to the players. A lot of what we're talking about here today is that there's so many other ways to get loot, so we have to make sure that the loot we give out in the raids matches up with all the other ways that we're allowing you to get items in the game. So a lot of that's just, we still haven't figured it out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
In Cataclysm, there was a very steep jump in difficulty between level 85 normals and 85 heroics, which was great, but the side effect of that was that at the 85 normals, there was only the 2, 3 that you end up running over and over and over again, and it was quickly tiresome. How are you going to handle that for Pandarian? Will there be more level 90 normals, or the sort of same 2, 3, then jump to the heroics?
We're currently not planning to have level 90 normal dungeons at all in Mists of Pandaria. We're planning to have the level up dungeons, and then heroics, and then challenge modes is the way you would see that flowing as far as like if your progression of content. And because of challenge modes, the normal and our heroics would be at a little bit of a lower difficulty level than what you saw in Cataclysm, because people that are looking for that extra level of difficulty could do the challenge modes.
Yeah, it's as you noted, like there wasn't really enough content to support a full tier with level 85 normals. And looking at Mists of Pandaria, we didn't feel like there was, we'd rather like spend our time working on the heroics, making that tier like super awesome, making the level ups really amazing. And just, we couldn't really make that one super awesome, so we just decided to cut it.
They're in this weird middle ground, so it's hard to make them feel as awesome as a heroic or a level up.
Right side of the road, okay. Left side of the road, okay. In the middle, squish like grave. That's what happened with those normals.
Thank you. All right, come on.
Hi.
My question's about hard mode toggling. Ulduar was the first hard mode. You guys said that was cool, but you had to go to the internet to figure out how to push a button and make Mimiron mad. You went to on-off toggle. Last year you guys said you didn't like it, had to go to the internet, but now the Dungeons rolls in. Can we go back to maybe having Sartharian bring drakes, or leaving the trees up in Freya's room activate additional abilities? That was kind of more fun than turn on hard mode, have more health, do more damage.
That's something. Those were, like you said, those were really fun. The idea that you could sort of like choose, effectively multiple difficulties for the fight, I think was pretty compelling. But as you noted, in the end, it was very difficult to come up with that kind of mechanic for every single boss. Like, it worked out great with Freya because she had, the sub-bosses with her. It worked out great with, the Iron Council because there was 3 of them, and which order it made sense, well, which order you did it in. But then you had bosses, and Mimiron was awesome. Like, if we could do another boss where a big red button made him angry, I'm totally down for that. Big red buttons, total win in my book. But there was others, the Frost one where it was very hidden. It was like, did you do it in time? Okay. And that's really all there was to it. So we really we can make these more consistent with with a toggle, with a normal heroic toggle. It makes it more understandable to the players. There's a lot of weirdness that went on where it's like, oh, we're going to try for normal, but they're like, oh, we kind of screwed up, so let's stop this, we're not. So it's much clearer, and that's what I think, when we're talking about the goals, making things understandable is a very important thing for all players.
Thank you.
My question is about the legendary items. Right now, you guys currently randomly choose the legendary to a class that hasn't gotten one for a while, but why can't you make a universal legendary quest chain that guilds can give the item to the most dedicated raider that deserves it at the time? So one guild may give it to their healer, another guild may give it to their tank or melee DPS, but they all have different abilities.
We could do something like that, but I think you lose the luster of the fact that anyone could get it at that point. What we like about what we have now is you build a lot of build-up around that one legendary. Like, rogues are about to get the next legendary now. And they've been waiting a long time to get their legendary, right? And we can design, what's really cool about it is the quest line to get it has all this specific rogue gameplay. You're sneaking around, you're pickpocketing, you're using rogue abilities all over the place specifically for it. So I think for us, it really feels like making sure that it's for one specific type of gameplay, like a class, makes it really feel right. And so that's what we did here. I mean, we could definitely open it up, but I think it would lose some of that luster, some of that exclusivity.
Yeah, you want unique and awesome or generic and mushy? We go with unique and awesome.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
It's a cool idea, though.
The 1025 lockout has been frustrating for me because it's basically made my alt spec a dead spec for current tier. I know the raid finder is going to help and give me something to do, so if I have a main spec of a tank, my alt spec is healer, I can't do the same current content as a healer. The raid finder, can we join that as a group with our guild, and is the content going to be satisfying enough?
You can definitely join as a group in raid finder, and I believe we have no lockout on.
Yeah,
but no lockout on raid finder.
There's no lockout, but you can only get loot once a week per boss, so it's a little bit different. But you can totally do your normal mode or heroic mode raid, and with the same character go into raid finder and get loot from there and have a fun time. As far as will it be satisfying for you? We're trying to make all of the encounters super fun, regardless of which difficulty you're playing it at. So I think there'll be something regardless of what difficulty you.
And just the general concept of 1025 and having the lockout be unified is something we always talk about. I mean, when we made that change originally, and so we've still got a ways to go, but we're always trying to figure out what's going to work best for the players at this time. So that's not completely out of the picture.
Right. So it might go back.
You never know.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right up, right there.
Hi, I was wondering about just for Cataclysm, there was 3 raids that came in straight from the expansion, and right after that we had Firelands, and it was only like 7 bosses compared to the 12 we had before, or 13 if you want to do heroic. But you know, so I was just wondering, like, have you guys thought about maybe like some way to make it seem like this, so it's not overwhelming in like the initial part of it with 3 raid dungeons and then just 7 bosses in there? That seems a little like you're too focused on one raid for a long period of time, and one, you know, it's like 2 sides of a spectrum. Is there going to be like a middle in the next expansion or something? You know?
Right now, we're talking about having what, 6, 5, and 5, I think.
6, 5, and 2.
Yeah, 6, 5, and 2. So something pretty similar, like 14 bosses on launch in the same way. But we're still not sure how many of the world raid bosses we want to do that are going to be in the exterior world. So we're going to have raid bosses like that as well. But definitely we want that to not feel like it's such a big jump, you know, all the time, where maybe one time you get 7, then you get 13, then you get 5. Essentially, the number of bosses comes down to, we need to have enough bosses to distribute loot correctly. You know, there's kind of a minimum number we have to make sure that we can spread the loot around. But other than that, I mean, it just comes down to the time of us being able to get a patch out with the number of bosses that we think feels right for that zone.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, hi, I would like to ask a question about the classic dungeons to see if there was ever going to be another one, kind of like heroic stockades, like Hogger. Yeah.
You never know.
Yeah.
You know, it might be like in the future, like via patch, we might do more classics, like we did Zul'Aman and Zul'Gurub in patches. You know, they're a lot of fun to do for us. I mean, they're really well received by the community.
We love doing those.
Right. I mean, everyone loves Hogger. I mean, so, you know, we'll see.
I mean, a cool fact, actually, originally, Dead Mines and Shadowfang Keep were supposed to be for patch 4.1. They weren't even originally in launch. And all of us on the dev team thought it was so awesome.
Yeah.
We were just like, no, we've got to get these in for launch because they're just too cool. So I think it just, you know, that's the kind of thing, whenever we have time, if we can get one in and it feels like it's going to fit, it's something we want to do.
Thank you.
Hello. So when you guys announced 4.3, you announced that there was only going to be 7 bosses, but that you were going to focus a lot more on making sure that the bosses felt more epic and more, that you put more work into them.
Right.
And I know this is just my opinion, but I didn't really feel like the bosses were anything special. And so when it came down to it, Firelands really only felt like half a raid. And then with the, 4.3 is already on the test realms, it felt like you guys kind of felt like we need to push this next patch out right away, so let's nerf all these bosses so guilds can get through it and we can push out the next patch. And I didn't really like that, so I was just wondering, is this something we can expect to see in the next, raid tiering in Mists of Pandaria?
That's certainly not the reason why those bosses were nerfed at all. It doesn't have anything to do with timeline. It has everything to do with, we want as many people as possible to experience that content. So we were looking at the number of people that were getting kills on the raid bosses, and it was extremely small. And for all the work that everyone puts into something like that, that's why we did the hot fixes right away instead of waiting, because we want to get that content to as many people as possible. And that's definitely why you saw that. So really the issue there is us probably over-tuning those bosses to begin with, and that might come off a different way, but it's certainly not about us trying to rush and get to the next content and making sure guilds are ready.
Yeah, and the 4-3 raids, the Death of Wing stuff, extremely epic. It'll be, you guys haven't seen the Corrupted Deathwing fight on PTR yet, but when you guys do, you'll be blown away.
Thank you. That's what. Oh.
Thank you for making a fantastic game.
Thanks.
Thanks.
All right, come on up.
For competitive raiders, have you thought about separating the difference between 10 and 25, since there's a difficulty difference in the way that it's set up for server first achievements?
We've discussed it.
Yeah.
That's certainly something. There are some differences between 10 and 25, like difficulties on heroic. It depends on, for some raids, the 10s were harder. Like some of the initial, Cataclysm raids. Some of those 10 heroics were really, really hard. And vice versa. In Firelands, the 25 ones ended up being harder. It's hard for us to. It's difficult to actually keep those perfectly balanced. There's usually one that's like a little bit easier than others. So that's something we've talked about, and can't make any promises, but we'll see.
Thank you.
Thank you.